Yeah, this is the Rabbi Shmuel show, and you're talking with David Matus today, in addition to me, that's Shmuel Herzfeld. David, you are an internationally respected human rights attorney, a Jewish attorney from Winnipeg, Canada. How did a nice Jewish boy like you end up in Winnipeg, Canada, before we get into the body of your incredible work?
I was born there.
How were you born there? Where were your parents from?
My parents were born there.
Your parents were born in Winnipeg. Where were their parents born?
Well, there's four of them, and
were any of them born in Winnipeg?
No. Two from one from Odessa, one near Odessa, one from what was then Russia, is now Lithuania, and one from Romania.
So born in, and they moved to Winnipeg, and it's unbelievable that you are second generation Winnipeg, and you have family there that came after you. And Winnipeg, it's an amazing thing that Winnipeg Jewish community is a thriving Jewish community to this day, and we should be aware of that, first of all. Now, that such a distinguished attorney is living in Winnipeg, and now you're visiting us in Washington. I want to get now into the body of your work. So, you have written many books. I'll just read off some of your titles. In addition to this most recent one, Bloody Harvest, The Killing of Falun Gong for Their Organs. You've also written Justice Delayed, Nazi War Criminals in Canada. And then another one, Closing the Doors, The Failure of Refugee Protection. Another one, No More, The Battle Against Human Rights Violations. Bloody Words, Hate and Free Speech, Aftershock, Anti-Zionism and Anti-Semitism, and you're the co-editor of The Machinery of Death. Most specifically, I'd like to get now into anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. Aftershock, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. What's the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism? Or is there a difference?
I would say anti-Semitism is prejudice against Jews writ large. It's kind of a blanket form of discrimination. Anti-Zionism is a specific form of anti-Semitism. It's a type of discrimination which says that Jews do not have the right to self-determination.
But don't you think that many people who say they're anti-Zionists are really anti-Semites?
Yes, absolutely. But and it sort of spills over. There's an overlap between the two, and I think some people will say there's a difference, but I think it's important to note that it's a difference of degree, not a difference of kind. It's general prejudice or general discrimination or general bigotry in the case of anti-Semitism, whereas anti-Zionism is I would say a specific form of bigotry, denying to the Jews one particular right of the whole panorama of rights, the right to self-determination.
Recently, some of the most important spokespeople for the Jewish nation have suggested that this is a time of anti-Semitism that has not been seen since the end of the Second World War. Is that an assessment you share?
It depends where you are. I would say...
well, I'm in Washington and you're in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
We can start with that.
And I would say in Washington, it's less of a problem than in Winnipeg, and in Winnipeg it's less of a problem than in Europe. I would say that we're seeing a spread of this kind of ideology of anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism, which is becoming more prevalent, but it's not becoming more prevalent everywhere at the same time, with the same depth. Before World War II, we saw a kind of anti-Semitism where Jews were demonized as individuals, and what we see now is a kind of anti-Semitism where Jews are demonized as a community.
In what sense are they demonized as a community? Meaning because of Israel?
Because of the demonization of Israel, and then the actual or presumed support of the Jewish community as supporters of this demonized state.
So do you feel concerned that some of the people who are laying the groundwork for the demonization of Israel are Jews? Does that, so to speak, make it kosher? Or do you think that there's anti-Semites out there who are really trying to do it?
Of course, I'm concerned wherever it comes from, whether it's Jewish or non-Jewish. But I mean, what we're dealing with anti-Zionism is an ism. It's an ideology, and I would say that because it's directed against the Jewish community, it's less likely for people within the Jewish community to fall prey to it. But in fact, some do, and we've seen this in the past with other ideologies that have turned out to be very hostile to the Jewish community. I mean, there was lots of Jews who were communists, even though, I mean, communism was very hostile to the Jewish community and so on.
Recently, at York University in Canada, there was an incident involving people who were trying to stand up on behalf of Israel, and there was even a physical attack. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, indeed I am. The universities in Canada and elsewhere have become hotbeds for anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. They've been hosting these Israel anti-apartheid weeks, where
Israel anti-apartheid weeks. Yes.
With the, I mean, it's one form of demonization of Israel, that Israel's an apartheid state, and what happens, and this is true of hate propagandists generally, they tend to gravitate towards institutions that give them credibility, universities, libraries, the places that give them credibility, and and the universities they're very poorly defended against this, because they have a tendency to lapse into free speech absolutism, and
you think that they're too lenient with respect to the hate speech that they allow?
Exactly, and it creates hostile environments for Jewish students at these universities. And what we don't see this yet in Canada generally, although we do see it in some universities. We don't see it in the U.S., but in Europe, we're seeing a decrease in the attendance of Jews at university, because the whole university system is...
I'd like to repeat that. So we're seeing a decrease in the attendance of Jews at university because of the anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
Where is that? Where can people follow up with that study?
It's happening in England. There's studies like that.
Wow, that's powerful.
And certainly in Canada, with York University, there's been a decrease in Jewish population going to York because of the hostility there.
Would you feel comfortable allowing, let's say, your 18-year-old child or grandchild to go there and walk around proudly saying that they are supporters of Zionism? Would you feel that they would be safe?
Well, they'd certainly be subject to harassment and hostility.
Certainly be subject to harassment.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Let's just, before we let you go, since we have such a distinguished attorney in our presence, let's talk for a little bit about your work with Nazi war criminals in Canada.
Okay.
Can you tell us what you've done with respect to that?
Well, I've been trying to get the legal system to work so that Nazi war criminals in Canada can be brought to justice. When I started out, there was absolutely nothing. I've been working on the field for decades, and now there's a system in place to deal with them, but it doesn't function effectively, and so I've been trying to work to make the system function effectively.
So Canada's almost a safe haven for Nazis?
Well, it has been, absolutely, in the thousands for decades.
Wow. How many Nazis do you think are still living in Canada?
Well, I mean, I don't have the names and ages of every single one of them, so again, we're left with an estimate. But obviously, we're dealing with a dying population. But
we should get them and imprison them before they die.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But Howard Margolian wrote a book on this, and he's a historian who worked for the War Crimes Unit in Canada, and he estimated that there were 2,000 who came in originally.
That's 2,000 too many.
Absolutely.
My friend David, I say to you, may you continue to go in strength and do the holy work you're doing, speaking out on behalf of Jews, speaking out against the Nazis, and I can leave you with a blessing that may you continue to make many enemies in the world, because the more holy work you do, the people who are wicked and evil will cower in fear of the truth that you come with. And may you continue to do this and tell them that you're watching them and that they're not going to get away with it as long as David Matus is around. Please pick up a copy of his latest book, Bloody Harvest, The Killing of Falun Gong for Their Organs. David, thank you for joining us on the Rabbi Shmuel Show.
Thanks for inviting me.